Honourable Speaker, I present the interim budget for 24-25. The Indian economy has witnessed profound positive transformation in the last 10 years. The people of India are looking ahead to the future with hope and optimism. With the blessings of the people, when our government, under the visionary and dynamic leadership of Honourable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, assumed office in 2014, the country was facing enormous challenges. With Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas as its mantra, the government overcame those challenges in right earnest. Structural reforms were undertaken. Pro-people programs were formulated and implemented promptly. Conditions were created for more opportunities for employment and entrepreneurship. The economy got a new vigor. The fruits of development started reaching the people at scale. The country got a new sense of purpose and hope. Naturally, the people blessed the government with a bigger mandate. In the second term, our government, under the leadership of Honourable Prime Minister, doubled down on its responsibilities to build a prosperous country with comprehensive development of all people and all regions. Our government strengthened its mantra to Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas and Sabka Vishwas. Our development philosophy covered all elements of inclusivity, namely social inclusivity through coverage of all strata of the society, and geographical inclusivity through development of all regions of the country. With the whole of nation approach of Sabka Prayas, the country overcame the challenges of once-in-a-century pandemic, took long strides towards Atmanirbhar Bharat, committed to Panch Pran, and laid solid foundations for the Amrit Kal. As a result, our young country has high aspirations, pride in its present, and hope and confidence for a bright future. We expect that our government, based on its stupendous work, will be blessed again by the people with a resounding mandate. Inclusive development and growth. Our humane and inclusive approach to development is a marked and deliberate departure from the earlier approach of provisioning up to village level. Development programs were thus provisioned. In the last 10 years, however, have targeted each and every household and individual through housing for all, Har Ghar Jal, electricity for all, cooking gas for all, bank accounts and financial services for all in record time. The worries about food have been eliminated through free ration for 80 crore people. Minimum support prices for the produce of Annadata are periodically increased appropriately. These and the provision of basic necessities have enhanced real income in the rural areas. Their economic needs could be addressed, thus spurring growth and generating jobs. Social justice. Our government is working with an approach to development that is all-round, all-pervasive, and all-inclusive. Sarvangin, Sarvasparshi, or Sarvasamaveshi. It covers all castes and people at all levels. We are working to make India a Vikasit Bharat by 2047. For achieving that goal, we need to improve people's capability and empower them. Previously, social justice was mostly a political slogan. For our government, social justice is an effective and necessary governance model. The saturation approach of covering all eligible people is the true and comprehensive achievement of social justice. This is secularism in action, reduces corruption, and prevents nepotism, prevents Bhai Bhatijawad. There is transparency and assurance that benefits are delivered to all eligible people. The resources are distributed fairly. All, regardless of their social standing, get access to opportunities. We are addressing systemic inequalities that had plagued our society. We focus on outcomes and not on outlays, so that the social economic transformation is achieved. As our Prime Minister firmly believes, we need to focus on 4 major castes. They are Garib, Mahilayeं, Yuva and Annadata. Their needs, their aspirations and their welfare are our highest priority. The country progresses when they progress. All 4 require and receive government support in their quest to better their lives. Their empowerment and well-being will drive the country forward. Garib Kalyan, Desh Ka Kalyan. We believe in empowering the poor. The earlier approach of tackling poverty through entitlements had resulted in very modest outcomes. When the poor became empowered partners in the development process, government's power to assist them also increases manifold. With the pursuit of Sabka Saath, in these 10 years, the government has assisted 25 crore people to get freedom from multi-dimensional poverty. Our government's efforts are now getting synergized with energy and passion of such empowered people. This is truly elevating them from poverty. Direct benefit transfer of 34 lakh crore rupees from the government using PM Jan Dhan accounts has led to savings of 2.7 lakh crores of rupees for the government. This savings has been realized through avoidance of leakages prevalent earlier. The savings have helped in providing more funds for Garib Kalyan. PM Swanidhi has provided credit assistance to 78 lakh street vendors. From that total of 78 lakh street vendors, 2.3 lakh have received credit for the 3rd time. PM Janman Yojana reaches out to the particularly vulnerable tribal groups who have remained outside the realm of development so far. PM Vishwakarma Yojana provides end-to-end support to artisans and craftspeople engaged in 18 trades. The schemes for empowerment of Divyangs and transgender persons reflect firm resolve of our government to leave no one behind. Welfare of Annadata. Farmers are our Annadata. Every year under PM Kisan Samman Yojana, direct financial assistance is provided to 11.8 crore farmers, including marginal and small farmers. Crop insurance is given to 4 crore farmers under PM Fasal Bima Yojana. These, besides several other programs, are assisting Annadata in producing food for the country and for the world. Electronic National Agricultural Market has integrated 1,361 mandis and is providing services to 1.8 crore farmers with trading volume of 3 lakh crores of rupees. The sector is poised for inclusive, balanced, higher growth and productivity. These are facilitated from farmer-centric policies, income support, coverage of risks through price and insurance support, promotion of technologies and innovations through startups. Empowering the Amrit PD, the Yuva. Our prosperity depends on adequately equipping and empowering the youth. The National Education Policy 2020 is ushering the transformational reforms. PM Schools for Rising India, PM Shri, are delivering quality teaching and nurturing holistic and well-rounded individuals. The Skill India mission has trained 1.4 crore youth, upskilled and reskilled 54 lakh youth, and established 3,000 new ITIs. A large number of institutions of higher learning, namely 7 IITs, 16 triple ITs, 7 IIMs, 15 AIMS, and 390 universities have been set up. PM Mudra Yojana has sanctioned 43 crore loans aggregating to 22.5 lakh crores of rupees for entrepreneurial aspirations of our youth. Besides that, Fund of Funds, Startup India, and Startup Credit Guarantee schemes are assisting our youth. They are also becoming Rozgar Data. The country is proud of our youth scaling new heights in sports. The highest ever medal tally in Asian Games and Asian Para Games in 2023 reflects a high confidence level. Chess prodigy and our #1 ranked player Pragnananda put up a stiff fight against the reigning world champion Magnus Carlsen in 2023. Today, India has over 80 chess grandmasters compared to little over 20 in 2010. Momentum for Nari Shakti. The empowerment of women through entrepreneurship, ease of living, and dignity for them has gained momentum in these 10 years. 30 crore Mudra Yojana loans have been given to women entrepreneurs. Female enrollment in higher education has gone up by 28% in 10 years. In STEM courses, girls and women constitute 43% of enrollment, one of the highest in the world. All these measures are getting reflected in the increasing participation of women in workforce. Making triple talaq illegal, reservation of 1/3 seats for women in the Lok Sabha and state assemblies, and giving over 70% houses under PM Awas Yojana in rural areas to women, and giving over 70% houses under PM Awas Yojana in rural areas to women as sole or joint owners have enhanced their dignity. Exemplary track record of governance, development, and performance. Besides delivering on high growth in terms of gross domestic product, the government is equally focused on a more comprehensive GDP, that is, governance, development, and performance. Our government has provided transparent, accountable, people-centric, and prompt, trust-based administration with citizen first and minimum government, maximum governance approach. The impact of all-round development is discernible in all sectors. There is macroeconomic stability, including in the external sector. Investments are robust. The economy is doing well. People are living better and earning better, with even greater aspirations for future. Average real income of the people has increased by 50%. Inflation is moderate. People are getting empowered, equipped, and enabled to pursue their aspirations. There is effective and timely delivery of programs and of large projects. Economic management. The multi-pronged economic management over the past 10 years has complemented people-centric, inclusive development. Following are some of the major elements. 1. All forms of infrastructure, physical, digital, or social, are being built in record time. Number 2, all parts of the country are becoming active participants in economic growth. Number 3, digital public infrastructure, a new factor of production as if in the 21st century, is instrumental in formalization of the economy. Number 4, goods and services tax has enabled one nation, one market, one tax. Tax reforms have led to deepening and widening of tax base. Number 5, strengthening of the financial sector has helped in making savings, credit, and investments more efficient. Number 6, GIFT, IFSC, and the Unified Regulatory Authority, IFSCA, are creating a robust gateway for global capital and financial services for the economy. Number 7, proactive inflation management has helped keep inflation within the policy band. Now, the global context, Honorable Speaker, sir. Geopolitically, global affairs are becoming more complex and challenging with wars and conflicts. Globalization is being redefined with reshoring and friendshoring, disruption and fragmentation of supply chains, and competition for critical minerals and technologies. A new world order is emerging after the COVID pandemic. India assumed the G20 presidency during very difficult times for the world. The global economy was going through high inflation, high interest rates, low growth, very high public debt, low trade growth, and climate changes. The pandemic has led to a crisis of food, fertilizer, fuel, and finances for the world, while India successfully navigated its way. The country showed the way forward and built consensus on solutions for those global problems. The recently announced India-Middle East-Europe economic corridor is a strategic and economic game changer for India and others. In the words of Honorable Prime Minister, the corridor, and I quote, will become the basis of world trade for hundreds of years to come, and history will remember that this corridor was initiated on Indian soil. Unquote. Vision for Vikasit Bharat. Our vision for Vikasit Bharat is that of prosperous Bharat in harmony with nature, with modern infrastructure, and providing opportunities for all citizens and all regions to reach their potential. With confidence arising from strong and exemplary track record of performance and progress, earning Sabka Vishwas, the next 5 years will be years of unprecedented development and golden moments to realize the dream of developed India by 2047. The trinity of demography, democracy, and diversity, backed by Sabka Prayas, has the potential to fulfill aspirations of every Indian. As Honorable Prime Minister in his Independence Day address to the nation mentioned, I quote, "There is no dearth of opportunities, as many opportunities as we want. The country is capable of creating more opportunities. Sky is the limit," unquote. Strategy for Amrit Kal. Our government will adopt economic policies that foster and sustain growth, facilitate inclusive and sustainable development, improve productivity, create opportunities for all, help them enhance their capabilities, and contribute to generation of resources to power investments and fulfill aspirations. Guided by the principle, reform, perform, and transform, the government will take up next generation reforms and build consensus with the states and stakeholders for effective implementation. It is an important policy priority for our government to ensure timely and adequate finances, relevant technologies, and appropriate training for the micro, small, and medium enterprises, MSMEs, to grow and also compete globally. Orienting the regulatory environment to facilitate their growth will be an important element of this policy mix. Aligning with the Panchamrit goals, our government will facilitate sustaining high and more resource-efficient economic growth. This will work towards energy security in terms of availability, accessibility, and affordability. For meeting the investment needs, our government will prepare the financial sector in terms of size, capacity, skills, and regulatory framework. Aspirational Districts Program. Our government stands ready to assist the states in faster development of aspirational districts and blocks, including generation of ample economic opportunities. Development of the East. Our government will pay utmost attention to make the eastern region and its people a powerful driver of India's growth. PM Awas Yojana Gramin. Despite the challenges due to COVID, implementation of PM Awas Yojana Gramin continued, and we are close to achieving the target of 3 crore houses. 2 crore more houses will be taken up in the next 5 years to meet the requirement arising from increase in the number of families. Rooftop solarization and Muft Bijli. Through rooftop solarization, 1 crore households will be enabled to obtain up to 300 units free electricity every month. This scheme follows the resolve of Honorable Prime Minister on the historic day of consecration of Sri Ram Mandir in Ayodhya. Following benefits are expected. Savings up to 15 to 18,000 rupees annually for households from free solar electricity and selling the surplus to the distribution companies. Charging of electric vehicles. Entrepreneurship opportunities for a large number of vendors for supply and installation. Employment opportunities for the youth with technical skills in manufacturing, installation, and maintenance. Housing for middle class. Our government will launch a scheme to help deserving sections of the middle class, and I quote from Honorable Prime Minister's words, living in rented houses or slums or chawls and unauthorized colonies, unquote, to buy and build to buy or build their own houses. Medical colleges. Several youth are ambitious to get qualified as doctors. They aim to serve our people through improved healthcare services. Our government plans to set up more medical colleges by utilizing the existing hospital infrastructure under various departments. A committee for this purpose will be set up to examine the issues and make relevant recommendations. Cervical cancer vaccination. Our government will encourage vaccination for girls in the age group of 9 to 14 years for prevention of cervical cancer. Maternal and child health care. Various schemes for maternal and child care will be brought under one comprehensive program for synergy in implementation. Upgradation of Anganwadi centers under Saksham Anganwadi and Poshan 2.0 will be expedited for improved nutrition delivery, early childhood care and development. The newly designed WION platform for managing immunization and intensified efforts of Mission Indradhanush will be rolled out expeditiously throughout the country. Ayushman Bharat. Healthcare cover under Ayushman Bharat scheme will be extended to all ASHA workers, to all Anganwadi workers and helpers. Agriculture and food processing. The efforts of value addition in agriculture sector and boosting farmers' incomes will be stepped up. Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana has benefited 38 lakh farmers and generated 10 lakh employment. Pradhan Mantri Formalization of Micro Food Processing Enterprises Yojana has assisted 2.4 lakh SHGs and 60,000 individuals with credit linkages. Other schemes are complementing the efforts for reducing post-harvest losses and improving productivity and incomes. For ensuring faster growth of the sector, our government will further promote private and public investment in post-harvest activities, including aggregation, modern storage, efficient supply chains, primary and secondary processing and marketing and branding. Nano DAP. After the successful adoption of nano urea, application of nano DAP on various crops will be expanded in all agroclimatic zones. Atmanirbhar Oil Seeds Abhiyan. Building on the initiative announced in 2022, a strategy will be formulated to achieve Atmanirbharta for oil seeds such as mustard, groundnut, sesame, soya bean, and sunflower. This will cover research for high-yielding varieties, widespread adoption of modern farming techniques, market linkages, procurement, value addition, and crop insurance. Dairy development. A comprehensive program for supporting dairy farmers will be formulated. Efforts are already on to control foot and mouth disease. India is the world's largest milk producer with but with low productivity of milch animals. The program will be built on the success of existing schemes such as Rashtriya Gokul Mission, National Livestock Mission, and infrastructure development funds for dairy processing and animal husbandry. Matsya Sampada. It was our government which set up a separate department for fisheries, realizing the importance of assisting fishermen. This has resulted in doubling of both inland and aquaculture production. Seafood exports since 2013-14 has also doubled. Implementation of Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana will be stepped up to 1. Enhance aquaculture productivity from existing 3 to 5 tons per hectare. 2. Double exports to 1 lakh crore rupees, and 3. Generate 55 lakh employment opportunities in the near future. 5 integrated aqua parks will also be set up. Lakpati Didi. $83 lakh SHGs. 83 lakh SHGs with 9 crore women are transforming rural socio-economic landscape with empowerment and self-reliance. Honorable Speaker sir, their success has assisted nearly 1 crore women to become Lakpati Didi already. They are an inspiration to others. Their achievements will be recognized through honoring them. Buoyed by the success, it has been decided to enhance the target for Lakpati Didi from 2 crores to 3 crores. Technological changes, new age technologies and data are changing the lives of people and businesses. They are also enabling new economic opportunities and facilitating provision of high-quality services at affordable prices for all, including those at the bottom of the pyramid. Opportunities for India at the global level are expanding. India is showing solutions through innovation and entrepreneurship of its people. Research and innovation for catalyzing growth, employment, and development. Prime Minister Shastri, Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri gave the slogan of Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. Prime Minister Vajpayee, Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, made that Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, Jai Vigyan. Prime Minister Modi has furthered that to Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, Jai Vigyan, and Jai Anusandhan, as innovation is the foundation of development. For our tech-savvy youth, this will be a golden era. A corpus of 1 lakh crore rupees will be established with 50-year interest-free loan provided. The corpus will provide long-term financing or refinancing with long tenors and low and or nil. I repeat that sentence. The corpus will provide long-term financing or refinancing with long tenors and low or nil interest rates. This will encourage the private sector to scale up research and innovation significantly in sunrise domains. We need to have programs that combine the powers of our youth and technology. A new scheme will be launched for strengthening deep tech technologies for defense purposes and expediting Atmanirbharta. Infrastructure development. Building on the massive tripling of the capital expenditure outlay in the past 4 years, resulting in huge multiplier impact on economic growth and employment creation, the outlay for the next year is being increased by 11.1% to 11,111 crore rupees. This would be 3.4% of our GDP. Railways. 3 major economic railway corridor programs will be implemented. These are energy, mineral and cement corridor. Number 2, port connectivity corridors. And number 3, high traffic density corridors. The projects have been identified under the PM Gati Shakti for enabling multimodal connectivity. They will improve logistics efficiency and reduce cost. The resultant decongestion of the high traffic corridors will also help in improving operations of passenger trains, resulting in safety and higher travel speed for passengers. Together with dedicated freight corridors, these 3 economic corridor programs will accelerate our GDP growth and reduce logistic costs. 40,000 normal rail bogies will be converted to Vande Bharat standards to enhance safety, convenience and comfort of passengers. Aviation sector. The aviation sector has been galvanized in the past 10 years. Number of airports have doubled to 149. Rollout of air connectivity to Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities under UDAN scheme has been widespread. 517 new routes are carrying 1.3 crore passengers. Indian carriers have proactively placed orders for over 1,000 new aircrafts. Expansion of existing airports and development of new airports will continue expeditiously. Metro and Namo Bharat. We have a fast expanding middle class and rapid urbanization is taking place. Metro rail and Namo Bharat can be the catalyst for the required urban transformation. Expansion of these systems will be supported in large cities, focusing on transit-oriented development. Green energy. Towards meeting our commitment for net zero by 2070, the following measures will be taken. Viability gap funding will be provided for harnessing offshore wind energy potential for initial capacity of 1 gigawatt. Coal gasification and liquefaction capacity of 100 metric tons will be set up by 2030. This will also help in reducing imports of natural gas, methanol, and ammonia. Phased mandatory blending of compressed biogas in compressed natural gas for transport and piped natural gas for domestic purposes will be mandated. Financial assistance will be provided for procurement of biomass aggregation machinery to support collection. Electric vehicle ecosystem. Our government will expand this and strengthen the e-vehicle ecosystem by supporting manufacturing and charging infrastructure. Greater adoption of e-buses for public transport networks will be encouraged through payment security mechanism. Biomanufacturing and biofoundry. For promoting green growth, a new scheme of biomanufacturing and biofoundry will be launched. This will provide environment-friendly alternatives such as biodegradable polymers, bioplastics, biopharmaceuticals, and bioagri-inputs. This scheme will also help in transforming today's consumptive manufacturing paradigm to the one based on regenerative principles. Blue Economy 2.0. For promoting climate resilient activities for Blue Economy 2.0, a scheme for restoration and adaptation measures and coastal aquaculture and mariculture with integrated and multi-sectoral approach will be launched. Comprehensive development of tourist centers. The success of organizing G20 meetings in 60 places presented diversity of India to global audience. Our economic strength has made the country an attractive destination for business and conference tourism. Our middle class also now aspires to travel and explore. Tourism, including spiritual tourism, has tremendous opportunities for local entrepreneurship. States will be encouraged to take up comprehensive development of iconic tourist centers, branding and marketing them at global scale. A framework for rating of the centers based on quality of facilities and services will be established. Long-term interest-free loans will be provided to states for financing such development on matching basis. To address the emerging fervor for domestic tourism, Honorable Speaker, sir, projects for port connectivity, tourism infrastructure, and amenities will be taken up on our islands, including Lakshadweep. This will help in generating employment also. Promoting investments. The FDI inflow during 2014 to 23 was $596 billion US, marking a golden era. That is twice the inflow during 2005 to 14. For encouraging sustained foreign investment, we are negotiating bilateral investment treaties with our foreign partners in the spirit of First Develop India. FDI is First Develop India. Reforms in the states for Vikasit Bharat. Many growth and development enabling reforms are needed in the states for realizing the vision of Vikasit Bharat. A provision of 75,000 crore rupees as 50-year interest-free loan is proposed this year to support those milestone-linked reforms by the state governments. Societal changes. The government will form a high-powered committee for an extensive consideration of the challenges arising from fast population growth and demographic changes. The committee will be mandated to make recommendations for addressing these challenges comprehensively in relation to the goal of Vikasit Bharat. Amrit Kal as Kartavya Kal. Our government stands committed to strengthening and expanding the economy with high growth and to create conditions for people to realize their aspirations. Honorable Prime Minister, in his Independence Day address to the nation in the 75th year of our Republic, said, and I quote, "We commit ourselves to national development with new inspirations, new consciousness, new resolutions as the country opens up immense possibilities and opportunities. It is our Kartavya Kal." Unquote. Every challenge of the pre-2014 era was overcome through our economic management and our governance. These have placed the country on a resolute path of sustained high growth. This has been possible through right policies, true intentions, and appropriate decisions. In the full budget in July, Honorable Speaker, our government will present a detailed roadmap for our pursuit of Vikasit Bharat. Revised estimates. Revised estimates of 2023-24. The revised estimate of the total receipts other than borrowings is 27.56 lakh crores of rupees of which the tax receipts are 23.24 lakh crore rupees. The revised estimate of total expenditure is 44.90 lakh crore rupees. The revenue receipts at 30.03 lakh crore rupees are expected to be higher than the budget estimate, reflecting strong growth momentum and formalization in the economy. The revised estimate of the fiscal deficit is 5.8% of GDP, improving on the budget estimate, notwithstanding moderation in the nominal growth estimates. Budget estimates for 2024-25. Coming to the year 2024-25, the total receipts other than borrowings and total expenditure are estimated at 30.80 and 47.66 lakh crore rupees respectively. The tax receipts are estimated at 26.02 lakh crore rupees. The scheme of 50-year interest-free loan for capital expenditure to states will be continued this year with an outlay of 1.3 lakh crore rupees. We continue on the path of fiscal consolidation, as announced in my budget speech of 2021-22, to reduce fiscal deficit below 4.5% by 25-26. The fiscal deficit in 2024-25 is estimated to be 5.1% of GDP, adhering to that path. So the gross and net market borrowings through dated securities during 24-25 are estimated at 14.13 lakh crore rupees and 11.75 lakh crore respectively. Both will be less than that in 23-24. Now that the private investments are happening at scale, the lower borrowings by the central government will facilitate larger availability of credit for the private sector. Vote on account. I'll be seeking vote on account approval of the Parliament through the appropriation bill for a part of the financial year 2024-25. I will now move to Part B. Honourable Speaker, sir, over the last 10 years, the direct tax collections have more than trebled and the return filers swelled 2.4 times. I would like to assure the taxpayers that their contributions have been used wisely for the development of the country and welfare of its people. I appreciate the taxpayers for their continued support. The government has reduced and rationalized tax rates. Under the new tax scheme, there is now no tax liability for taxpayers with income up to 7 lakh rupees, up from 2.2 lakh rupees in the financial year 2013-14. The threshold for presumptive taxation for retail businesses was increased from 2 crores to 3 crores. Similarly, the threshold for professionals eligible for presumptive taxation was increased from 50 lakh rupees to 75 lakh rupees. Also, corporate tax rate was decreased from 30% to 22% for existing domestic companies and to 15% for certain new manufacturing companies. Honourable Speaker, sir, in the last 5 years, our focus has been to improve taxpayer services. The age-old jurisdiction-based assessment system was transformed with the introduction of faceless assessment and appeal, thereby imparting greater efficiency, transparency, and accountability. Introduction of updated income tax returns, a new Form 26AS, and pre-filling of tax returns have made filing of tax returns simpler and easier. Average processing time of returns has been reduced from 93 days in the year 2013-14 to a mere 10 days this year, thereby making refunds faster. Indirect taxation. By unifying the highly fragmented indirect tax regime in India, the GST has reduced the compliance burden on trade and industry. The industry has acknowledged the benefits of GST. According to a recent survey conducted by a leading consulting firm, 94% of industry leaders view the transition to GST as largely positive. According to 80% of the respondents, it has led to supply chain optimization, as elimination of tax arbitrage and octroi has resulted in disbanding of checkposts at the state and city boundaries. At the same time, tax base of GST more than doubled, and the average monthly gross GST collection has almost doubled to 1.66 lakh crores this year. States too have benefited. States' SGST revenue, including compensation released to states in the post-GST period of 2017-18 to 2022-23, has achieved a buoyancy of 1.22. In contrast, the tax buoyancy of state revenues from subsumed taxes in the pre-GST four-year period of 2012-13 to 2015-16 was a mere 0.72. The biggest beneficiaries are consumers, as reduction in logistic cost and taxes have brought down prices of most goods and services. We have taken a number of steps in customs to facilitate international trade. As a result, the import release time declined by 47% to 71 hours at inland container depots, by 28% to 44 hours at air cargo complexes, and by 27% to 85 hours at seaports over the last 4 years since 2019, when the national time release studies were first started. Tax proposals. As for tax proposals, in keeping with the convention, I do not propose to make any changes relating to taxation and propose to retain the same tax rates for direct and indirect taxes, including import duties. However, certain tax benefits to startups and investments made by sovereign wealth or pension funds, as also tax exemption on certain income of some IFSC units, are expiring on 31/3/2024. To provide continuity in taxation, I propose to extend the date to 31/3/2025. Moreover, in line with our government's vision to improve ease of living and ease of doing business, I wish to make an announcement to improve taxpayers' services. There are a large number of petty, non-verified, non-reconciled, or disputed direct tax demands, many of them dating as far back as 1962, which continue to remain on the books, causing anxiety to honest taxpayers and hindering refunds of subsequent years. Honourable Speaker, sir, I propose to withdraw such outstanding direct tax demands up to 25,000 rupees pertaining to the period up to financial year 2009-10 and up to 10,000 rupees for financial years 2010-11 to 2014-15. This is expected to benefit about 1 crore taxpayers. 1 crore taxpayers would benefit out of this. Economy then and now. In 2014, when our government assumed the reins, the responsibility to mend the economy step by step, and to put the governance systems in order was enormous. The need of the hour was to give hope to the people, to attract investments, and to build support for the much-needed reforms. The government did that successfully, following a strong belief of nation first. The crisis of those years has been overcome, and the economy has been put firmly on a high, sustainable growth path with all-round development. It is now appropriate to look at where we were then. I repeat, it is now appropriate to look at where we were then till 2014 and where we are now, only for the purpose of drawing lessons from the mismanagement of those years. The government will lay a white paper on table of the House. The exemplary track record of governance, development and performance, effective delivery and Jan Kalyan has given the government trust, confidence and blessings of the people to realize whatever it takes, the goal of Vikasit Bharat, with good intentions, true dedication and hard work in the coming years and decades. With this, Honourable Speaker, I commend the interim budget to this august House. Jai Hind.
Item number 2, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji.
So, with your permission, I rise to lay on the table the following statements under Section 3(1) of the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act 2003, Medium-Term Fiscal Policy cum Fiscal Policy Strategy Statement and Macroeconomic Framework Statement.
Item number 3, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji.
Sir, with your permission, I rise to move for leave to introduce the Finance Bill 2024.
प्रश्न ये है कि विधेयक को पुनर्स्थापित करने की अनुमति प्रदान की जाए। जो सदस्य इसके पक्ष में हाँ कहें, जो सदस्य विरोध में ना कहें, मेरे विचार में निर्णय हाँ वालों के पक्ष हुआ, हाँ वालों के पक्ष हुआ। माननीय मंत्री जी विधेयक को पुनर्स्थापित करें।
So I introduce the bill.
सभा की कार्रवाई शुक्रवार दिनांक 2 फरवरी 2024 को प्राप्त 11 बजे तक के लिए स्थगित की जाती है।
Yeah.
So it's as expected broadly.
Right. So that was, of course, India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, who has officially presented the final budget of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government. And this, of course, was the interim budget before India goes to polls in April or May this year to discuss whether what was announced was in line with expectations, the predictions. I have with me our business editor, Rahul, who is in the WION studio to discuss this and a lot more. Rahul, first things first, was it as expected?
Broadly, yes. The surprising part was the fiscal deficit target. It was expected to be about 5.4% for next year. That's lowered to 5.1%. It's very clear they're looking at fiscal discipline now. They're looking at lowering debt at any cost. And that's a broad takeaway, but broadly in line with what was expected.
Right,
overall.
and as I understand, there will be no change to taxation in the 2024 interim budget.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on that?
That was expected as well,
Right.
because they really cannot make any significant changes. That's not what is done usually in the interim budget. This is only for the first 3 months, right, before, until the elections and a new government is formed. So tax rates, nobody expected a change in the tax rates.
Right.
It'll come in the full budget.
Right. Let's talk about the focus in the finance minister's speech. As expected, the renewed focus on youth, the poor, farmers, and of course women. Your thoughts on that?
I think it's very similar to what they planned last year. I think the nuances that they have spoken about in this year in terms of specifications and allocations, I think that makes a slight difference. It looks like they're serious. Last year, there wasn't so much money allocated to their focus areas. But this year, it's clearly changing. They're looking at putting money into these sectors, into the focus areas. One of them is on youth, for example. They've increased allocations for skill development or for tech. So these are important takeaways from the budget.
Right, and also talking about the focus on women empowerment, she also mentioned that, the country cannot progress until we empower particular sections of society, be it the poor, be it the women and the youth. You mentioned the upskilling of youth. What about women empowerment? What was announced there?
I think the Nari Shakti concept as such, they are looking at improving allocation, skill development, also the direct money to women farmers. I think there'll be a change in that allocation right now. But I think the full budget will give you a better picture of this. At this point, it's just an announcement in the focus area. So we'll need to look at the numbers when the full budget comes out.
Yeah. Talking about the guiding principle that she mentioned, reform, perform, transform. Let's discuss that now.
Words, broadly. I think in terms of growth, I think it's very clear. International bodies are accepting that India is the fastest growing and India will be a $5 trillion economy in 2 years. 2047 plan, I think that is interesting at this point to make it a developed economy. There are lots of schemes that India has announced last year, which have been taken forward now in the interim budget. I think we'll need to wait for the full budget to see, while the government is looking at cutting deficit, how are they going to boost growth and certain sectors? Where are they going to get the money from? Because that's the question that's not answered in this budget yet.
Right. In the lead up to the budget, we were talking about the focus on infrastructure spending, capital expenditure, which is needed, investing in India essentially. Was what was announced in line with what was expected?
Actually, better than that. So that's where the question comes. How are they going to maintain fiscal discipline while increasing capital expenditure? I think something that was missed was how are they going to improve or increase or get private investment into capex, the capital expenditure. How are they going to boost that? I didn't see any significant announcements on that, but I think that should come in the full budget again.
Right. Another significant announcement was that the government will now be launching a scheme to help the deserving sections of the middle class, as was earlier quoted by Prime Minister Modi.
See, I think if you look at the Niti Aayog data, it clearly speaks about how a larger population now is in the middle class at this point. So they had to address it at some point. The lower strata of the middle class, they had to address it. There are schemes. Will there be any tax breaks? I think that should help the lower strata as well, but that's not coming now. So again, I think this is broadly in line with the main themes and the direction of the government, but there are a couple of questions that we need to look at.
Right. If I may ask, what are those questions?
One is, how are they going to fund?
Right.
They have not spoken about disinvestment because they have not been able to match to the target that they have set over the last few years. And I think they are looking at that aspect to fund some of the schemes like we thought before the budget. Let's wait for the full budget on that.
Right. My colleague Vikram Chandra is also with us to talk about this. Vikram, what's your analysis, your wrap-up of the budget?
Well, the wrap-up essentially, Priyanka, is pretty much that as expected, you haven't deviated from the convention, which is pretty much not to do much. That's an interim budget. There was a very tantalizing statement that Nirmala Sitharaman said, when our government comes back, we will present a full budget in July. So that's essentially what the takeaway was. No change in taxation, no change in what's happening. A certain direction on the fiscal glide path was, of course, there, that there will be further consolidation. But essentially, it was a recitation of all the major things that have happened in the last few years and an indication of some potential focus areas going forward, tourism, infrastructure, and the likes. But that is pretty much it. That, she's saying wait for the full budget, which will come in July. I think that was the sum and substance of it.
What about the focus on youth? I think that was one of the pillars of growth, as she mentioned, that the government will continue to focus on the youth, the poor, the farming community, and also women.
I think that's been part of what the Prime Minister has been saying, right? That there are only 4 castes and these are the 4 important castes. So, yes, specific measures were mentioned and a few individual proposals, Priyanka, were discussed and mentioned out there in each of those cases. But if people were thinking there's going to be some massive, dramatic announcement which is going to have, it's not been appropriate, it's not been the custom that you have something which is very election-oriented. So I don't think we had too much of that. Like in the review, economic review, there was a listing, of course, about all the successful things that the government has done, and you would expect that. There was also a listing, if you must have seen, about a number of other. The 4 castes was what you were referring to in each of those areas. But she did talk about the fact that getting growth to everybody is real secularism, in a sense, was one of the references she made. And then she spoke about some of the factors where she wanted development to happen: infrastructure, digital, GST, how all of those individual things are helping was something that she did draw everyone's attention to.
Right, Vikram, as you rightfully mentioned, she did talk about Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, which was the mantra, so to speak, of this budget. In your view, was this more of a report card of how the last 5 years have been?
Essentially, yes, right? Because if you take a look at it, again, I'm coming back to elements of the review that was actually done a couple of days back, because we did hear elements of that. It's basically been reporting on the fact that India was in a situation of a certain amount of stress financially, talking about all the things that the government has done, talking about the actual steps that have been taken, and in particular drawing attention to areas like infrastructure. And let's face it, infrastructure, logistics, that has been areas in which a lot of very dramatic changes have taken place. A lot of dramatic progress has also been done over the last few years. So there was a clear reference to that. Also, you must have noticed that's one of the areas where a very clear outlay was mentioned, that 11.11 lakh crore rupee figure on infrastructure spending. Infrastructure clearly is something that the government continues to believe in. But there was a hint there, and more than a hint, there was an actual statement there that at some point you're going to start moving from the government doing all the heavy lifting and the private sector has to come in and the private sector has to start spending. And therefore also talking about the fact that as fiscal prudence comes inside, government isn't borrowing that much. It frees up the space, Priyanka, for private sector to be able to get money. The fact that the banks are in a much better shape than they were in a few years ago, presumably also will help in that.
Right. We also have in the studio Dr. Vikas Singh, a senior economist. Vikas, we spoke before the budget was tabled. Now she has presented the budget. Your thoughts?
I think as expected, there's no big bang announcement. But I think it's online with what we've been expecting, in the sense that she promised that there's going to be continuity when they come back to power. I think sometimes it's also a good idea to just leave things as it is. My only disappointment has been that we expected some minor changes for the MSME sector because they are really the drivers of not only the growth but also the drivers of the economy. Close to about 70% of all jobs that exist in India is provided by the MSME sector.
Right.
Most of our viewers will not be disappointed to know that most of these employees, 80% of those employees employed in the MSME sector make less money than even the per capita income. So there is certainly something that needed to be done for the MSME sector. I hope 4 months down the line, when they come back, we can probably expect a far more comprehensive announcement for the MSME sector. I'm also happy that she talked about, and I think the most defining statement from the finance minister was that we don't focus on the outlay, we focus on the outcome. That has been the characteristic of the government, and we just hope they maintain that.
Absolutely. Right. Dr. Singh, thank you for that. In fact, let's now go over to Vikram Chandra to decode the budget with more expert analyses. Over to you, Vikram.
Thanks a lot, Priyanka. I think one of the interesting things, of course, about the fact that it was an interim budget was the length of it, right? We normally have budget speeches for about 2 hours. This was over and out in 1 hour flat. So lots and lots of guests are going to continue to come in as I speak. We'll keep on going to them. But let me start with Jayant Krishna, who's with our CEO, Foundation for Advancing Science and Technology, and at the CISS. Jayant, your sense of that overall interim budget, some of the directional elements that you did speak about, what do you make of them?
Yeah, so Vikram, I think it's a business as usual, and it is the interim budget in the true sense. Perhaps one of the shortest budget speeches of any finance minister, less than an hour. And I think there are no surprise elements at all. And I think one good, while a lot of individuals, the huge middle class, which constitutes a huge voter base, there was a motivation for her to announce some personal tax benefits in terms of slab rationalization, higher standard deduction, and so on and so forth. That didn't happen. That was surely a step in the right direction. And overall tax regime, direct, indirect, everything, nothing changes, which is long term. If you look at, that's good for one simple reason, because the investors all over the world now look at some kind of a regulatory certainty that they want to experience while engaging with India, and too many changes, big ticket changes, especially in the tax regime, both direct and indirect, is not to their liking. So I think that's something good in the budget. Other couple of things which I saw, a huge focus on infrastructure that she laid in terms of tripling it in the last 4 years of this government. And also a huge, in a budget year when, fiscal prudence is very important. I think on already a big base, if you announce 11.1% increase on infra spend, which amounts to 3.4% of the GDP, I think that's a pretty impressive, pretty good. But one thing which I see loud and clear, which is a significant change and a new item brought on the table by Nirmala Sitharaman, is on research and development. We all know, India as a country, we spend just about 0.7% of our GDP on scientific research and development, which is far lower than most developed countries in the world. So I think there she has talked about rupees 1 lakh crore kind of a corpus to be created, and which will be available even for private sector, for R&D projects, the way I understood, right. And both for long-term financing as well as short-term financing. And it will have either very low or negligible or nil rate of interest. So I think, now private sector can invest in R&D without bothering on the cost of, borrowing that money for research and development, because they can always take these loans from this corpus.
All right, Jen, just hold that thought. We'll come back to some of those aspects you were talking about in just a couple of minutes. But yes, one of the clear, concrete, if I may use that phrase, one of the concrete outcomes of the interim budget was a continued commitment to infrastructure and actual outlay out there, 11% up. India is not slowing down at all when it comes to then to talk to about that, but then Deepak Shetty, CEO Managing Director, India and South Asia at JCB, which of course, as infrastructure is built, JCB is being used all the way across the board. And you also, of course, chair the CII National Council on Capitals and Engineering. That infrastructure announcement, the fact that it was made and underlined even in an interim budget, presumably gives you a lot of confidence that what we are seeing around us is going to continue for a while.
I think it's a very heartening to see that there is a continuity in the policy. And I would say this budget is both about discipline and direction. The direction on infrastructure development and that focus continues. And it is not only about the 11.1 lakh crores announcement, but also other elements. For example, improving the connectivity, the focus on a dedicated freight corridors. Logistics cost is a big challenge that the country faces, from around 12 to 13%, whilst in the developed world, it is around 8%. So all of this also will contribute into further infrastructure development, more importantly, reducing the cost that some of us face. The other point I wanted to mention was also, when we look at infrastructure, we sometimes more look at the national projects, the big highways, etc. But also the role that the state governments play is very important. And I think that this disbursal of 75,000 crores to the state governments, I'm sure part of that will also translate into further improvement of infrastructure at the rural level through the state governments, again will be very positive.
And to take that point which you just made a little bit forward, infrastructure is often seen as railways and roads and airports, and of course it is there. And in this speech, she referred to all of those things, and there was growth. But what you were saying about the states is, we're now seeing a new approach where individual states can do things on a mission mode also. For example, around tourism. She correctly pointed out that India's got some of the most incredible tourism potential anywhere in the world, plus domestic tourism. So the fact that state governments will be induced to build world-class facilities in individual tourist areas, is that something that you think could also see an inflection point?
I think this will also have a multiplier effect. I think it's fantastic. And as tourists, when we visit, we travel, we see the challenge because of the lack of infrastructure, the connectivity, and I think this will sort of further spruce up the economy in the rural hamlets, because all of them will get benefit of more and more tourists visiting. So I think every element of infrastructure development has been connected. And as you rightly say, sometimes when we look at infrastructure, we only look at roads, highways or airports. But there are other critical elements of that particular system which has also been addressed, which is very positive as a part of this budget. And other point I want to talk about is discipline. I think 5.1% fiscal deficit. I think that also directionally is very, very positive.
So I'm actually trying to figure out where all of that is coming from, right? Because if there are no new taxes, and they aren't because taxes have not been changed, and yet India is spending the amount of money that it is now on infrastructure. I mean, 11.11 lakh crores. If you'd said 8 years ago, 7 years ago, that's the amount that India is going to be spending on infrastructure, most people would have struggled to believe it. So where's the money coming for all this?
So,
and there welfare measures also taking place.
Well, I'm an engineer, not an economist, but I will hazard a guess. I think it's more about the improvement in the collections. We are seeing that whether it is through the toll collection, the GST collection, I think the Honorable Finance Minister alluded to that particular fact, that the discipline in collection is improving. And I think GST, we all agree that has been a milestone and a landmark change. I'm sure all of this will benefit to put more money into the government's coffers, which they can further invest into infrastructure development.
Okay, let's get an economist in on that fiscal deficit and where the money for all this is coming from. Dr. Singh is still with us in the studio. Dr. Singh, how do you see the maths for all of this working out, right? More spending in areas like infrastructure, and yet the fiscal deficit is remaining fairly constant coming down to 5.1, and she's recommitting to that glide path that will try and bring it down to 4% and under. How is it happening? Is it entirely compliance, or is there something else to it?
I think it's a combination of growth and compliance. Both of them, it's almost like a double engine, as most politicians talk about. So compliance is a big factor, and we are already seeing that the number of people who are filing tax is going up. The smaller entities which were out of the tax bracket are coming back. But this also has a double-edged sword, Vikram, because if the formalization of the economy gives you higher taxation, but in the short run, it's not such a great idea, because the small and the medium enterprises are hurt. So the government needs to also factor that in, at least for the next couple of years, to make sure that the MSMEs are not hurt to the extent that they start closing down. Having said that, I think the finance minister needs to be applauded for being fiscal, prudent, and 5.1 is a great number. I think the finance minister also has leeway, because the non-tax revenue can also go up, because if the economy is doing well, the income that comes from dividend, from the RBI, and of course, the best of all is that she can always dip into the Deepam fund, privatize or disinvest a couple of entities which are now doing really well, and the market price and the share price clearly demonstrates a part of that as well.
I think that's one interesting area which might be looked at. Of course, we'll have to see all the fine print for where the money is coming from. But coming back to, as you said, what's happening on the ground. So as TB and looking at what's happening in capital goods, the order books, what other capital good companies that you're aware are seeing this. How is all of this really translating at the grassroots? We see some of the roads coming up, but is that infrastructure spending actually translating at the ground level at improving things in a very dramatic manner?
I think it's a very good question, and I will give you 2 data points. One is the construction equipment industry in India last year grew by almost 28%. And the construction equipment in industry today is the 3rd largest in the world after North America and China. So, which certainly gives you an indication that more and more machines are sold, which are helping build the infrastructure. But I will give you one more data point. At JCB, we have got telematics on almost 2 lakh machines. And these machines communicate back with us. And we are seeing continuous improvement in the utilization of the machines which takes place. We have data right up to district level or village level, which tells us that certainly the utilization of the machines have grown in compared to last 3 or 4 years. So I think both these data points tell us that what is being announced is getting translated on the ground.
And how much more room do you think this infrastructure boom has to go? Is there still a long way to go before you actually become developed, you catch up with the US, you catch up with China? Presumably India still has a long way to go.
I think, again, I'll give you a data point. Like I said, the construction equipment industry has grown by 28%, but with that also we are selling only 80,000, 90,000 machines, while in China or USA it would be more than 250,000. So I feel, and we did a survey, by 2030 we expect this market to grow from around 80,000 machines to 250,000 machines. So I think we are truly at the start of the cusp of the growth in infrastructure, and we will see more and more development taking place in this sector.
All right. Well, Shobha Kamneni coming in to join us. Short speech, so we were all expecting to be sitting for another 1 hour listening to her. Or maybe we shouldn't have been expecting that, because at the end of the day, it is an interim budget. And she did say that she'll be back with, or somebody will be back in July with a full speech. But what did you make of what you did here?
First, I really liked what you said about, 28% growth. I think these are the stories that India needs of being able to grow. And so the new terminology of FDI, which is first develop India, I love that. I think that we should use this more, because the speech also... But
do you sometimes need that FDI to develop India in the first place? Or is there enough capital in India now that you don't really need foreigners coming in?
I think that the nature of capital and the nature of tech has changed. But the way that we look at our industrial policy is still in the Purana Zamana. So if all that changes, because, instead of, I'm a big proponent of saying that here's a services sector contributes 54%. Really what we do, create jobs. I think that this is the sector that we need to really push more, because India needs more jobs. And when you're first developing India, when you're getting that, the capital will come, you have disruptions of AI and all these coming in. We have to upskill and reskill. So I liked what they said, from more medical colleges, more women and opening colleges, and giving them the push in STEM. These are important, even if it was a short speech. So we have to see the content of what was said. And I like some of that, as much as I like the fact that they kept the tax rates unchanged. Yeah. Sometimes it helps just to cool things down and keep things steady.
But, it may only be for 3 or 4 months, right? Because you might have tax change rates, whenever the full budget is presented. But let's try and get, as I was just asking him to, from all the pronouncements that we hear, how are things actually transforming on the ground? So let me ask you about healthcare, right? From the hospitals and other space. She did refer to it. They opened up Ayushman Bharat to more and more people. Again, that was few more people, ASHA workers and the rest. But how's that part of... This is one of perhaps the biggest bang announcement that we'd heard in the last 9-10 years, when they came out and said Ayushman Bharat as China medical, insurance operating for everybody. There was talk at the review also that's being offered to more and more people, access to healthcare. But how is that actually working on the ground, according to you?
It's actually working quite well. That it's, first of all, it is the largest healthcare insurance scheme in the world. So we have to, India needs to take credit for doing something so big and bold. And the fact that, there were some naysayers that said, oh, this is not going to work. It's actually working. Now they're increasing the reach. It was very rural. I think they're moving into the urban areas also. The state governments are all coming in because health is a state subject. So I'm very positive of what they've done in healthcare. The fact that they're going to convert more medical college, create medical colleges from the government hospitals they have. Ours is the first, which is in Chittoor. And I think that's an important point. They're good models to scale from. And you asked me about the spend. Vikram, pre-COVID, India used to spend around 1.5% of GDP on health, which is about the worst in the world. Because of COVID, they were forced to take it up to, in some areas, even 2.5%. Fortunately, we're still around that range.
Right.
So we've not gone down. So I think they're moving in terms of health development, and all these are good signs.
That's so interesting, because what today is, as an entire, if you step back a little bit and think what's the exercise today all about, it's to take stock of what's happened in the last 10 years and to start talking about a possible roadmap for what could happen in the next 5 years, or at least what should happen in the next 5 years. So if we had to do that, if I was to rewind 10 years ago or even 15 years ago, what would we have been saying? We were saying, you need to spend a lot more on infrastructure. You need to spend a lot more on health and education. You need to do things like ease of doing business. Now, presumably that's work in progress. But on infrastructure and on health and education, how much of the agenda that you would have had 10 years ago has been fulfilled? And if there's something pending, what is still pending? I'll start with infrastructure and then come to healthcare.
I think overall, directionally, the way the government has focused, particularly in last few years, coming out of COVID, has been absolutely fantastic. And we are seeing that those policies getting translated into actions on the ground. There are two elements of infrastructure development, one which happens through the central government, and the second element which happens through the state government. I think the state government bit has been found a bit lagging compared to what we would have expected. But I'm equally very happy that last year's 50 lakh crores and 50,000 crores and this year's 75,000 crores will certainly help spruce up that investment which comes through the state government also. So overall, very, very positive what has happened in last 10 years.
So directionally, if you had a wish list, 3 or 4 things that she's mentioned, some of the roadmap in railways and other areas, but what else would you hope to see in July?
I would say more specific information on allocation to the roads and highways, allocations to the railways. I think somewhere it must be there in the text, but something which regularly she has been announcing. I'm sure that will give us more confidence that more investment will take place in hardcore physical infrastructure development. The second point I wanted to make was focused announcement on rural infrastructure development. Through Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, Awas Yojana, we saw this announcement about 2 crore houses being built, but a similar announcement on the roads in the rural hamlets, I think, will be very, very important.
Right. If I could ask you for your roadmap then on healthcare, what would you have had 10 years ago? What has been done and what is still to be done?
I would have thought the biggest problem 10 years ago is scarcity of facilities and access by all, because you really want healthcare to be so broad that everyone, should be able to get it. Ayushman Bharat has definitely solved for this. The fact that more hospitals have come up, more healthcare, and the exciting part of it is that India has actually leapfrogged in digital health, whether it's the government stack or it's all us private players coming in with digital health. This is something that has really made a transformation for access and for cost. So there's been a huge transformation. Going forward, I think the opportunities, when you're talking about these more medical colleges, it's really to create great jobs and India for a greying world. So this is a point. India needs jobs. India needs well-paying jobs. And I think healthcare will be about the biggest player for that.
And with AI coming, who knows, the way healthcare could also change is something else to keep in mind.
I think that AI, we should make generative AI work for better quality of jobs rather than displacing jobs. And if India can get that right with a good new industrial policy, I think that this is something that the world will learn from us.
All right. Well, talking about new technology, I'm sure you're all seeing that QR code which is there on your screen. If you're wondering what that is all about, just scan it. Scan it. You can ask experts any questions that you have, or others, and we'll try and get those questions answered for you during the course of the day. So that QR code, interactive television, is something which is very clearly one of the innovations that you will see more and more of. Jayant, if I could just get you into that debate, and an exercise that we'll keep doing today, report card on the last 10 years and unfinished business, unfinished agenda to do in the next year, next 5 years, next 10 years. What would be very high on your list of priorities?
See, I mean, in last 9-10 years, I would, if I had to give marks, I would give 8.5 out of 10 to the government for the efforts made in the last 2 terms. In terms of the unfinished agenda, I definitely see, Vikram, that, on healthcare, I think we've just crossed 2% of our GDP on public expenditure on healthcare. That has to go to up to 4% progressively. That's very, very important. If universal access to healthcare has to be ensured for a country as huge as 140 crore people, that's very, very critical. Education and skill development is another huge agenda where a lot of unfinished task exists. We invest just about 3% of our GDP on the government spend on GDP, both federal and state governments put together on education and skill development, which is among the lowest among all major developing economies and the developed countries. This has to be doubled to at least 6%. That's very, very important. Otherwise, this entire talk about a new education policy or India reaping a rich demographic dividend, this would remain an unrealized opportunity or a potential. So I think this is very, very important. And third, to my mind, which is extremely important, that we have to become not just the 5th largest or 4th largest or 3rd largest economy. We have to become an economy driven by innovation. We are right now a distant cry from that. And that cannot happen unless we lay a lot of focus on creating intellectual property within the country. Right now, we leverage, be it Apple, be it Samsung, be it any other technology, any other manufacturing that you look at, most of it, if not all, we leverage IP developed elsewhere, and therefore the true economic value add that accrues to a nation, it really happens not just by owning manufacturing. For example, I'll give you China's example. China manufactures, more Apple iPhones than what US does. But for every one iPhone manufactured in China, the economic value add that happens in China is just about $10 per phone. And for every iPhone manufactured in China, the economic value added happening in US is anywhere between $30 to $60, depending upon which model is there. Because whosoever has the intellectual property decides how would be the distribution of profits and costs and so on and so forth. And therefore, we have to invest much more on research and development in science and technology space, which has been languishing at about 0.7%. And that too, 2/3 of it actually happens in the government sector. Industry does barely 1/3 of that, So I think that has to go up very substantially. I still do not have many details, but this 1 lakh crore of outlay that the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced about long-term financing for research and development. As they say, unless you go through the detail, but at least the top of the line item which was mentioned in the budget speech, that holds some promise. So to my mind, these three are education and skills, healthcare, and science and technology R&D are the 3 unfinished tasks.
All right, Jayant Krishna, thank you so much for joining us with that perspective. How do you get more and more of the economic value? Well, let's turn our attention now to another very important sector. As you're talking about India becoming a key member of supply chains, as you talk about how India can set up factories that will service not just India, but the rest of the world itself. A lot of this, of course, happening in South. So who better to talk to than Kamal Bali, who's, of course, President and Managing Director at Volvo, but also chairman of CIA for the southern region, which is where a lot of this is actually unfolding. Let me talk to you about auto specifically first, and then I'll come to some of the broader questions. A lot of what Jayant was saying is actually playing itself out in auto. India is now getting all of these factories. People are coming in and developing it. There's talk about how can you build them, and also not build them just for India, but also for the rest of the world. If you had to take stock of the last 10 years and look at the agenda for the next 5, what would that be?
I think, first of all, thank you very much, Vikram, for having me on this channel. I think the last 10 years have been very, I would say, productive for India. We have set a course which will define the future years very, very clearly. I mean, if you look at the manufacturing sector, I mean, which is one of the sectors of the economy which has always been a little more fragile than other sectors, because and we have hovered always around 15 to 17% of our GDP, and we need to move to about 22 to 25%. And automotive sector is almost 50% of manufacturing. So very well said that therefore this assumes greater importance, because it drives MSMEs, and so the new technology is coming. The fact that we are part of global value chains now, our quality standards have improved dramatically. Of course, the world is also moving at a very fast pace. There are Industry 4.0 challenges to get our MSMEs up to speed on that, because MSMEs account for almost 85% of manufacturing, even in automotive sector. So how do we really push them up? So therefore, to my mind, there's 1 lakh crore in technology and R&D, which she has set aside, I would say more like a grant, because it's over 50 years, okay, I mean, repayment. So I think that's something very, very important for Indian industry.
So interim budgets are normally just a statement of broad purposes.
Right.
But you and most of the experts you've been speaking to have been catching on that one thing as potentially a big bang announcement, even in an interim budget, because it potentially allows a lot to be done.
Lot to be done, absolutely. It is going to have a